AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Quick, he's going to go. What a give it to Smith, and they stop him again. Go back. He looks, fires for the end zone, intercepted, the 20, the 10, the 5, touchdown, Matt Ware, midfield, he's going to go, Deshaun Jackson. He steps up his head and falls forward, and he fumbles the football, and the Eagles have it, it's one, and the Eagles win.
It's all birds, all the time.
And welcome to another edition of the AATBirds Weekly Report. I myself, Johnny Ulecka, is joined as always by Chip at Chip for the Birds and special guest Gayle Saunders from 4th and Jawn at Eagle Sessions. Hey, very, very happy to have you as we're going to be talking. I think this is the second year in a row we've done this where we had you on to talk about some free agents we'd like to see the Eagles take a look at. We have our free agent list that we will be getting into, discussing who we think. We have 5 each. I know we all want to do like 10 or 12. There's so many different names that we have that we want to dig into, but all of us have some different players. A couple are the same, but it's going to be a fun night of discussing some free agents. But Gayle, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I feel like this is the favorite time to go shopping in your mind. Everybody wants to be GM of the Eagles. I think we're right there along with Howie in mind and spirit. I wish I was at the combine right now, but we're praying that he makes the right selections come draft time. But I think the off season gets started off with free agency. I think that's a really fun time for the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, them coming out and having a big press conference beforehand, I mean, look, we all have our thoughts about the Eagles and they're going to put out whatever product that we want, but we all know that this team needs a couple of upgrades and improvements here and there. So it's going to be interesting to see the vision of this team because they definitely fell short of all expectations this past year.
Yeah, well, starting 10-1 and then losing 6 of your last 7 is not the way you want to end a season.
Sound a little jaded, Johnny.
I'm all right. I'm better than I've been. No, I'm all right. There's some stuff I do want to go over with this list, and then I also do want to bring up kind of how we talked about a couple of things that I want to get your guys' take on, especially the Hassan Reddick stuff, discussing him. And I don't want to talk about the Bradbury stuff because he just had to say that because he's not under contract. We don't have to dig deep into that. But I do want to get into Hassan Reddick because it kind of does relate to free agency because as I did mention before we came on here, I talked about the free agent edge rushers. But, let's start it off with talking about Chip's list. We're going to let you dive into who you'd like to see the Eagles pick up. And then Gayle and I will trash it, but go ahead.
Well, thank you, Johnny. I appreciate you so much. So I focused on a couple key positions. Now, I feel that offensively, the Eagles have the pieces. They just didn't execute well. So a lot of the decisions that I made were to fill some weaknesses along those spots. So like a wide receiver 3 in Tyler Boyd. I think that you could get him at a decent price, especially with them focusing so much energy on T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I think that Boyd is going to walk and try and get an opportunity elsewhere. So I think you can get him at a pretty decent price, and he's an obvious upgrade over Zacchaeus and Quez Watkins. We know that L'Jarius Sneed has got some sign and trade situations now with the Chiefs. I think he's the obvious choice to be a Philadelphia Eagle. There's already been a lot of chatter about having him on this team, so I would be willing to work out some sort of deal where Bradbury goes away and Sneed comes in. I just know that we'd have to give up some draft capital. So now that it's not just a straight free agent situation, it seems unlikely. I've been a big fan of Dalton Schultz for a while, and I think that this team is lacking in a secondary tight end that can actually be a threat on the offense rather than just an additional blocker. And I think that Dalton Schultz would fit that pretty well. Not to mention the familiarity with Kellen Moore. So I think that Schultz would be a pretty good addition. With the running back market out there, I know that we could go big ticket items, with the Saquon Barkleys and the Josh Jacobs and the Tony Pollards and all them. But I think the Kareem Hunt would be a nice addition to this team. I know he's been, related to the Eagles for a couple of years now. But that's also with the understanding that Swift is going to be back on this team. I need Swift back on this team. And we all know that I love talking about punters. So for me, while Mann was a phenomenal punter, I still miss the time that we had the best punter in the league, which is Cameron Johnston. So if he somehow becomes available, I would like to re-energize and bring Cameron Johnston back into the fold. And I would like to settle with the current punter that we have, Brandon Mann, if Johnston is not available. Go ahead, gentlemen. Those are my thoughts.
I'll let Gayle go first. Go ahead.
The punter one threw me for a curve, but
I love Cameron Johnston. I was so upset when we let him go. Aaron Cypus was not the solution, and originally I wanted Murder Leg, but he quickly signed with the Chiefs, and so Cameron Johnston is my guy.
Interesting. Schultz, I was a big fan of Schultz coming out of Stanford, I believe. I felt like he was the perfect mid-round selection if you wanted to get a tight end, and Cowboys drafted him, so I had to detach myself from him. But I do think the production on the back end for tight end in Philly is super lacking. I think Albert O is still a project in the works that they're still willing to throw money at. But I think Jack Stoll and the Calcaterras of the world, just a guy. So I think I like the idea of upgrading at tight end. Snead, I think as much as I love Snead, my coworker's cousin, so I didn't find that out until our Eagles were in the Super Bowl, and they're like, my cousin plays on the Chiefs, and I'm like, who's your cousin? It's like Snead. You see my last name is Snead. I'm like, didn't put two and two together, but
you're that Snead.
I think he would be amazing. I'd love to have him. It's just the fact that you have to trade for him, give up draft capital when we need every pick that we can. It would be awesome because I think when you see him throwing guys around like Tyreek Hill on the ground and having his way like it was Burger King, that's cool. Boyd, I was looking at Boyd. I'm wondering what his market value is, if he's going to demand more than our liking, but I do like Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, so looking at the list, like Cameron Johnston, I get that, and I know when Chip sent me the list, I was right away.
You knew.
I knew right away. And Braden Mann for me, 26 years old. He had one of the best seasons a punter has had in an Eagles uniform, and you're going to need to re-sign him because if you look at the team that released him last year in the Pittsburgh Steelers, they got rid of their punter Harvin real early in the offseason, which means
they want him back.
Yeah, either they want him back or they're going to address that position. But a guy who's familiar, who was there last year. So that's something where I think you need to re-sign the punter there. Looking at the list, I'm not a big Kareem Hunt fan anymore. I just think he's kind of lost it. I understand he's come in to be a backup in terms of if you re-sign Swift. I get that. The Dalton Schultz one is interesting. Like Gayle mentioned about the Cowboys, Kellen Moore was there. So it's a familiarity there, which is going to be some emphasis in my list when you look at who is on the defensive and offensive coaching side. Sometimes you want to marry that when you're looking at free agency, and because you have guys on new coordinators coming from other spots, other places that have guys that are free agents who they've worked with and have had success with. You can look to them to see potentially adding them to the teams. And, Snead, we talked about that. Unfortunately, you don't want to give up picks. It would be great to have them, but unfortunately, I'm not giving up.
Like when we made this list, the Snead news hadn't come out yet, in the same situation where I also wanted, who do I want, Johnny?
Antoine Winfield.
I want Antoine Winfield from the Bucs, but I mean, he's going to be a Buck again. So, It's tough to give up draft capital when you're looking at free agents. With the Kareem Hunt thing, like I mentioned, it's only if they re-sign Swift, because then you're bringing him in as a backup. I think if you don't re-sign Swift, you have to go for one of the more big ticket items.
Yeah, and I think Tyler Boyd, he's very interesting because a part of me thinks the market may not be as high, but again, I didn't think the market was going to be as high for Christian Kirk that
True.
it wind up being. So if there's a team who is wide receiver needy, who has some extra cash to throw around, he could go for a lot higher than you'd expect. And
Which is not the Eagles. The Eagles are not wide receiver needy and going to throw an overload of cash at Tyler Boyd. So if we can get him at a discount, cool. But I think that's kind of a stretch 3 rather than a realistic 3.
He's his market value right now is at 8.7 mil.
Okay.
His market value for a 3-year deal, 3-year, 26 mil.
See, that's not terrible. It's not bad. I just don't know if the Eagles are going to go that route. I think the Eagles' range in terms of receiver money, what they want to pay, is the maybe $3 to $4 million a year.
Yeah, especially for a
range.
3. And Javier checking in here, kind of liking the Ertz Goddard scenario with a Goddard Schultz. Again, the pairing of 2 pass catching tight ends is kind of my thought process.
So with the next list, I want you to put up Gale's list.
You got it.
And let him go over who he would like to see the Eagles add.
Now I'll start with Chauncey, because I think in terms of juice, in terms of coverage ability, versatility. If you see Chauncey, you could leave on the field. You can leave him anywhere and trust that he's going to give you everything he's got. He's got a little crazy. Philadelphia is a little crazy. I think we resonate with his craziness. I think we all know we made a mistake in terms of we could have brought him back versus Bradbury, and I think that money where we put with Bradbury, we kind of thought he might have been gone. The fact that we got him back, I thought we were a little bit surprised, but I thought Chauncey, he earned. But that's my thing. I've heard things behind the scenes in terms of why would a 25-year-old not be able to land a multi-year deal more than that's things that I've heard kind of like play into like maybe why he's not getting the multi-year deal, and the way his social media is kind of crazy. But other than that, I like his crazy, and I think if we're gonna patch things up and bring him back for another ride. But the other thing is it also in terms of what Fangio likes, because Fangio he's got his probably final say on this. If he's not a Fangio fit, then I have other there's other safeties out there, maybe a Duggar, a Chin. Maybe that's what they're looking for. I know Chin they had ties to before he got drafted. They had interest, and then they heard a trade might have been in the works last year. Then he got injured. But Shahir, talking about a linebacker who, left the 49ers, came to Tennessee, just broke some records and tackles, was flying all over the field. I think that kind of juice where you not have to break the bank for him. I just think any linebacker is going to be upgrade. So I think, if you're going to bet on a guy on his upside, he could be a guy that they could be interested. I know all the Titans love to come up north to Philly, but you know what it is. Mooney, I've heard rumblings when I was down at the Senior Bowl about potential interest the Eagles might have in Mooney. My thing is with the Bears offense being a 2-pack of ass as of late.
That's a great way of putting it.
What would Mooney look like in an Eagles offense? Wide receiver 3 has been. I've been wanting to upgrade for the last 2 years. I thought we gambled and missed badly. I think a guy at the catch point is more consistent than Quez. Also has juice. He's a 4.38 guy. Definitely has some speed, playmaking ability, and I think he might be a good fit. There's other guys that I could be interested. Me personally, I think this draft is too rich with wide receivers from first to fourth. I think you can get your guys in the mid rounds, and I'd be more apt to do that than keep spending if you don't have to. But if they feel like he's a fit, overall veteran that has some juice and we've seen him flashes 2 years ago, that'd be interesting. Brissett, I think in terms of I need to know that we have somebody capable to win us 2 games if Jalen Hurts is hurt. Could Jalen Hurts have sat out a couple games and not felt like he had to play if he had a more reliable option instead of Mariota? I mean, this is the thing you have to think about, in Philadelphia. The backup quarterback always seems to do amazing things. So I think, I think he got 1 year 8 last year. If he's too high for the Eagles and you want to go Huntley from
I like Huntley.
Ravens,
Huntley's a good pick.
That's another option. But I have all these tiers, but yet you put baby in a corner, so I had to give you something. Van Ginkel, and again, we're talking about was he Fangio's teacher's pet in Miami for a guy who they asked him to do some multiple things. Started inside, playing linebacker, but then is able to put him on the edge and was firing off the edge, making some plays, making a lot of pressure. I think if you're looking at a cheaper option, if this is due to Hassan potentially leaving out the back door, you want a guy with some versatility. I think Van Ginkel could be a Fangio guy, and that's my basic free agent list. I have a whole bunch of guys, so let us talk about it.
Yeah, so with your list, I like Al Shahir. I really like. He turns 27, but he's I just like you said, he made tons of tackles, and I just think he's an upgrade, big time upgrade to what you had on the field last year, and I think that is a major. And I think it's a big thing that Fangio, I believe, wants to do is have those impact linebackers. Because it's not this Band-Aid, let's get these undrafted free agents. Let's get these guys, hopefully these bottom-end free agents on one-year deals. Maybe they'll turn into something. Maybe you can't keep going that route because it hasn't worked. Yeah, I understand TJ Edwards turned into something, but it took, 3 years to start seeing something there? You can't just expect it overnight. And I don't think they have time to.
I think that's really important, Johnny, overall, though, is that how many times have we sat on the show and talked about how quick we are to give up on a guy? You know what I mean? TJ Edwards was starting to show signs, and that's why he turned it into a bigger deal. And, I mean, I just think that no matter what we do, we have to let these guys develop a little bit.
Yeah, you have to let these guys develop. Van Ginkel, he developed in Miami. Yep. Inside linebacker, was able to pass rush. I think he's a jack of all trades type of player that I know. Now, listen, if he were to come to the Eagles, I think they would have a little bit of PTSD from
Kiko Alonso.
No. No. Like Alex Singleton. Now, Singleton wasn't terrible with the hair flow in and all that stuff. That's people see that and get little PTSD when it comes to free agents. But I like Van Ginkel. You'll see on my list as well. So I won't go too deep into him. Brissett, I like as a backup, like you mentioned. You need a guy that if there's an injury, I don't really think the Eagles can rely on Tanner McKee. They would like to possibly because it would save up money to having to spend. Maybe get a veteran to be able to get on the practice squad after cuts and stuff. If you're able to keep when you keep a third quarterback, I don't know. I know Adam's here talking about Minshew. I'm not sure Minshew would be coming back that's just my opinion there. But even like a Tyrod Taylor or Tyler Huntley, something along the lines of that, where you can trust a guy a couple games, like you mentioned, Gayle. If there's an injury, you're able to win a few games. You're not worried about somebody going in and looking absolute terrible, back in 2005 when Mike McMahon was the quarterback. there's
hurt us.
yeah, that's what I do best. CJ I liked him. I think the one thing the Eagles need to do when you look at free agency and even the draft, we need more playmakers. We need more ball hawks. We need more guys that will be creating turnovers. The whole notion when you look at this defense the last year, it was they didn't turn the ball over.
Nope.
Yeah, they turned the ball over.
They turned the ball over. They didn't get turnovers.
So I think that's one main key, and that's one thing that CJ did. He had what, 7 interceptions, 6 or 7 interceptions. He made plays, and I think that's huge. And making plays. Darnell Mooney, watching Bears games, he would run free, wide open, and be overthrown numerous times.
Yep.
So I think he's a type of player that can stretch the field vertically in the slot, and will be able to catch the ball and not drop it, or not being able to cause a pass interference penalty like Quez did countless times.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that experiment is over, and
it needs to be.
Yes,
it does.
Exactly.
Another guy that was talked about, Eddie Jackson from the Bears. He had a really good couple of years with Fangio. I think he's had some injuries as of late. Was a captain for the Bears last year. I think he was dealing with a foot injury, I believe. But I think he's out there on the market. I think he's 30. But I really want to stay away from the 30-year-old safeties at this point in time. There's so many guys out there to be had. Like if you can stop from going the veteran route in their 30s, I'd be okay with a younger guy with some juice in this.
You can go after a guy. So like the Eagles did with Rodney McLeod and Jenkins. Like they weren't in their 30s. They were in their mid 26, 27 years old. You're able to get these guys, and it wasn't the top end of the free agents, because back in 2015 with Malcolm, it was Jairus Byrd and TJ Ward and those guys, and the Eagles, I was big on Jairus Byrd. I liked what I saw when he played. And then he got signed by the Saints from the Bills, and he didn't really do much of anything. And he made a huge, massive deal, and the Eagles got Malcolm, turned into a leader, one of the best safeties the Eagles have had. So
have had right after Dawkins, right?
Yeah, and you don't need to go with the big name. You can get the guys who are 26, 27 years old, and they can prove dividends for you, and they can give you a lot of good football, and be able to get the team into playing meaningful football and in playoff games, and be able to get guys that are going to be here for a handful of seasons and be productive.
Like guys like, Cameron Curl, 26.
Yes.
Jeremy Chin is 26.
Mm-hmm. I know they loved him during the draft, and I believe they tried to trade for him, but he got hurt last year. So there's a lot of love for him.
Duggar's 28, and then Chauncey's 26.
I was actually surprised that nobody had Jeremy Chin on their list. That's the only reason why I left him off, because I thought somebody else was going to scoop him. But I could easily see Jeremy Chin being an Eagle.
Oh, he's on my list. He's on my list. I had to get 5.
Gayle, I like your list. One thing that I worry about, and it's one of the reasons why I left some of these guys off, is the injury factor. So you look at C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's had some injuries these past couple of years, and like Javier was saying in the chat, the way it ended with the Eagles and him saying some things, I don't see that marriage re-happening. While I would love it, I was a huge fan of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and I know he signed a deal very quickly, which means we had to pivot to Bradbury, and we all see how that worked out. I would love C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I'm just not thinking it's realistic. The Van Ginkel thing for me, I think he's coming off of such an injury. While he is a Fangio guy, I mean, he really... so many of the Dolphins ended up getting hurt. So I think for a comfort factor, great. But again, I would rather him be next year's edition when he's played a full season without a series of injuries. Like he should sign a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere and then go from there. Jacoby Brissett, I think, is a phenomenal backup idea. He's kind of proven that he can come in anywhere and just do what he needs to do. And I think that he is a good backup option. He also gives you a very similar ability set that Jalen Hurts has. So you're not revamping an offensive scheme in a game that Jalen's not playing. I love Mooney's size and, high point ability, especially as a 3. And I think, I think all of your guys would be good additions. I just don't know the injuries and the ugly breakup with CJ is kind of like
Yeah, that's more of I'm a Chauncey stan. Since
I love him. When we got him, I loved him. When he played exceptional, I loved him. When he left, I was heartbroken, and we have not been able to replace him.
Coming from the guy that's trying to get the old Eagles punter from years ago back on the team.
Because he was a top-tier punter. And we have seen that special teams matter.
Hey, Michael Clay did his thing this year.
Michael Clay, man. Talk about the glow up in the coaching ranks.
Yeah. One thing I did hear that Van Ginkel, his name is causing a lot of buzz with the Eagles right now. So
yeah, I mean, I could easily see that happening. The injuries concern me. I mean, that's what it comes down to. CJ's injuries concern me. Van Ginkel's injuries concern me. But again, welcome additions. Just
one thing I like about the injuries, it keeps the dollars down.
That's true. You get them on a slighter discount.
Yeah, you'll be able to get a better deal.
But ideally, I'd love to hit the draft for some of these guys. I mean, there's a lot of
hit on the draft.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I could. The wide receiver thing for me, you can. That's one of the reasons why I went to the Senior Bowl. It's one of the reasons why I was watching like a hawk. I was like, wide receiver 3-4 could be had at the Senior Bowl, and you look at teams like the Chiefs who got Rashee Rice, the
they just found the guy
of the world. You can get these guys. I mean, Watson was down at the Senior Bowl. I feel like the Packers, all their wide receivers were from the Senior Bowl. So I think ideally you can get those guys down there and not pay. Because we have our own other wide receiver, Devontae Smith, that needs to get paid.
Yeah, got to give an extension.
And I'll be honest, obviously we're not getting him, but can we just talk for a second about how good Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be in this league?
Bro, he's got size, speed,
high catching ability, high point. I mean, that guy is going to be
everything.
If he turns out to be a flop, I would be shocked. He seems like one of those sure thing picks coming up.
I can't believe the amount of Trotter's son was out there. I was watching. I got to see Jerry Rice down at the Senior Bowl. His son's in this year's draft.
Yeah, Brandon Rice.
This is stuff I would do in Frank Gore's son's in the draft. I would make guys in Madden years in advance. Rosters their son's finally in the league.
Yeah, they're finally in the league.
It's ridiculous.
The one player I like receiver-wise, now I don't believe the Eagles are going to get him. He's going to go in the first round. It's the other LSU receiver, Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah. He got some juice for his size, too.
Yeah, 6'4", 204. He's a player I like. But there's a lot of receivers.
Malik Capers is crafty as hell as well.
Yeah. And, there's a lot. When you look at deeper in the draft, there's a receiver who was at Alabama and then transferred over to UCF, Javon Baker.
Javon Baker, yeah.
He's another shifty type of receiver that
he was putting in work at the Senior Bowl as well. He's one of those guys when people are like, oh, day 3, that some wide receiver that we don't know. I'm like, well,
Roman Wilson
transfer. Oh yeah, he killed it down there as well.
Yeah, so there's some guys, but that's for another show.
You ready for your list, Johnny?
Yeah, throw it up there.
Let's throw darts in this one.
Yeah. So this list is some heavy hitters. I think McKinney's the heaviest hitter there.
Yeah, you're paying some money for him.
But the other guys, I think you can get him at a little cost efficient. Van Ginkel, we talked already about him. I would like him as a edge rusher. He's not going to cost you a ton. He's going to be somewhat reasonable priced. Cedric Wilson, I have. He played with Kellen Moore in Dallas, and I feel kind of bad for him because after he signed with Miami, a week later they traded for Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
And it was like he was already on the back.
It was Dallas all over again.
Yeah, and listen, I think he would be a good option as a slot guy. Him or Noah Brown. It was between the two of those guys.
I almost put on there. Mine.
Yeah, Noah Brown I like because he could play special teams. He gives you that versatility. He played really well with the Texans before he got hurt. But he'd be him or Cedric Wilson. I could see those one of those two guys. Blake Cashman, I really liked watching him play for Houston. He played with the Jets early in his career, 6'1", 237. He's a type of linebacker I feel like doesn't get a ton of publicity, but he makes plays. And I just think he's not going to cost you a ton. He's not going to break the bank for you, but he's going to be a very serviceable type of player, 27 years old. You can get a couple of good years out of him playing next to Dean or whoever else you want to put in that position at the ILB. But last guy I have is John Runyon Jr.
I love this one. I love this one.
Jason Kelsey retires. Cam slides over to center. I could see him being, I feel like the Eagles will sign a veteran right guard to compete with Steen or whoever it is if they draft another guy at that position, whether they want to make Steen a tackle or whatever they do along the lines of that. But I think Runyon won't cost you a lot of money. If you can't get Trotter Jr., get Runyon Jr. But I like
bring back the whole gang.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But for me, like going to the big fish in my list for McKinney, it's, he's a playmaker. The injury thing, I know he has been injured.
Mm-hmm.
From Alabama. But he seems like anytime he plays the Eagles, he's always making a play. He's always doing something. He just flashes. And I feel like that's a type of safety. He's still young. I believe he's only 26, I think. I think he's really young. And I don't know if the Giants will franchise him. I don't believe so. But no, actually, no. He turns 25. So
they got too many other things that they got to deal with right now.
Listen, he's going to be the biggest fish and going to cost the most money, in my opinion, safety-wise, I believe. I think he's the top safety, I would say. So age-wise and, the amount of dollars he's going to command. That's why the rest of my list is kind of guys who aren't going to break the bank, some bargain guys. But if they come away with, half of these guys, I'd be pretty happy. But yeah, like Gayle, my list, I got a long, long list, and you got to filter through. And I picked a couple guys I didn't think you guys would pick just to kind of bring them up in conversation.
Very nice. I do like your list. Now I know John Runyon also. He's a member of the Bro Barn. He works out with Lane Johnson. So that has some.
And he would play next to Lane Johnson. So that is.
It's interesting. Anyone works out in the Bro Barn. Yeah. Cashman, I've been a fan of Cashman since his time with the Jets. Anything Joe Douglas likes, he's been my guy. Joe Douglas is my guy. Wilson, I do believe he got lost in the sauce a little bit. But I like the idea of there's going to be one dude from Kellen Moore's past that is going to be on this roster. I believe it's going to be either Pollard, Wilson, or Noah. I think have a chance somehow because there's some guy that you want familiarity.
And they're all good cog pieces. Like they're all good pieces to join in with the new regime.
And I think when you look at what you mentioned with someone from Kellen Moore's past,
Dalton as well. Is this Dalton?
Yeah, right. Dalton Schultz is what Chip mentioned. But I think a guy like Noah Brown, to me, it really it's like the Zach Pascal edition that they made in 2022. A big receiver, he plays specials, blocker, like a lot of that I see in Noah Brown, and I could see the Eagles saying, hey, giving him the wide receiver 3 position or signing him to be the wide receiver 3 or 4, whatever. But he does so many things for them, and it's not like, he doesn't play special teams, but we have to try to get a different guy. But he plays special teams, so he's very valuable in the aspect of that. And I know the Eagles and Sirianni, they really value that. And that was one huge thing with Zach Pascal that they absolutely loved when he played for them. He was always down the field blocking. He made catches here and there, but he was a very physical and determined player. It wasn't about him. He just wanted to do the best for the team. I feel like Noah Brown, with the Cowboys, he did a lot of that. He wasn't a feature receiver. He didn't, catch the ball a lot. He was down the field, making blocks, playing special teams, doing that.
Yeah, I look at your list again. We talked about Van Ginkel. My thoughts are there. Xavier McKinney, man, what a great addition if we can get him, but he will cost a pretty penny. And in which case, you're going to have to deal with the Byard and the Bradbury of it all, because I don't think you can have all of them in your backfield. Cedric Wilson, again, great addition, big body guy who just really needs a chance to shine. Cashman, man, what a good linebacker. It depends on what Fangio plans on doing. It also depends on if Howie is going to spend money on linebackers. We have said this over and over again. He's got to do it, just whether or not he does. And then the John Runyon Jr. thing, I mean, again, there's no bad there. I like Willis Sr., Diedrich saying, hey, CJ and Patrick Green, again, if you're spending all the millions, then those are guys you're bringing in. But I think that this list, McKinney's kind of a pipe dream, but the other guys are all reasonable additions to the team.
Yeah. McKinney, I like his market value right now is 10.4, 5-year, 52 mil, average salary of 10.4. I think his leadership, if we want to add leaders into this group, because we are losing captains. He was a captain for the Giants. Mm-hmm. Got the Bama blood. You know how they're built. I do think they were talking about like transition tag with him, perhaps. But we'll see. I think I do think the fact that the Eagles have been missing at a high clip at the safety spot, guys that they brought in, it's like making the band of like rejects at the guys that they're bringing in could have been players that have either drafted a little bit higher injury history, like at some point in time, we'd have to pull a McLeod, Jackson type signing. And
for me, Gayle, it's when we talk about key positions with the Philadelphia Eagles, we talk about the backup quarterback position because we know what that means to this franchise, to this team. I think ever since Brian Dawkins was a Philadelphia Eagle, everybody has looked for the next Brian Dawkins. And for a while, Malcolm Jenkins was that guy. Rodney McLeod was on pace to be that guy. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was on pace to be that guy. So for you to have such historic misses in that safety position, this fan base is unforgiving.
It's always going to be that way, unfortunately.
Sean Considine, come on, man.
You stop it.
The man some love.
You stop it, sir.
Sean Jones.
You stop
Nate Allen.
Nate Allen from UCF.
You stop it.
So before we go our separate ways, I want to bring up a comment that Howie Roseman talking about Hassan Reddick. And, the way that he was speaking about it really, to me, seemed to leave the door open of they really aren't sure he's going to re-sign. It just seems like it's almost like 50-50. And, I'm on the train that I think you need to bring your best, an elite pass rusher back. It's hard to just go out in free agency and sign a guy or two guys and draft another guy and you get that production. Hassan's going to be 30 years old. You got to give him, 22 to 25 million a year. Do you do that, or do you trade him potentially? Hopefully a team gives you a 2 and another pick. To me, I want to see him back on the team because you can't just deplete yourself of elite talent and expect to just replenish it in a year, in an offseason. What do you guys think?
He wants to be here. What are we doing? He wants to be here. He's a local kid. He's an elite pass rusher. What are we doing?
Well, my thing with when a player does not rock the boat, when a player outperforms his contract and they get not rock the boat, Camden pride.
Yep.
Temple pride.
Yep.
Fan favorite.
Yep.
Tone setter.
Yep.
Thrower of the quarterbacks in Brock Purdy.
What are we doing?
What are we doing? If you're setting a precedent to send a guy like that packing when he deserves every bit of what he's getting paid, you don't see Steelers trying to get rid of T.J. Watt. Who also 29, the Hendricksons from from Cincy.
Natty.
And
They're all in the same age bracket. So
and you look at guys like this, like I think of like a guy like Bobby Wagner. Okay, a different position, but okay, he's old, but he's still the team leader in tackles every year. Are the Seahawks getting ready, Bobby Wagner? No, they're not.
what is that? Double-digit sacks in 4 years straight.
Yeah.
What about, like, listen, he's turning 30 years old. You give him a 3-year, $62 million, $63 million contract. You can't tell me when he's 32, he's still not going to be an elite pass rusher, because you look at a guy like Khalil Mack. He had I think he had one of his best seasons this season. Yeah, his best output at his age 33 season. So don't tell me he's old and he's not going to be a good pass rusher. You can't just get rid of elite talent.
You can't
and expect to just replenish it with a draft pick or a couple free agent signings, because we've seen the Eagles try to do this with free agent signings and replacing elite pass rushers. Now, listen, I was too young. Chip may have been he was a little bit older, but when they got rid of Reggie White,
nope, I was before at my time.
They tried to replace him with a number of guys. And then, they hit on William Fuller. He had a couple double-digit sack seasons. He was older. And then it wasn't until 1998, and they had to trade for Hugh Douglas before they got another really good pass rusher. You can't just expect to trade him and then sign a free agent or two and expect to get the ton of production, because Josh Sweat's also due for a contract.
And he continues to play at a level where he's going to get paid.
Yeah, my thing I was going to say about Josh Sweat. I mean, he's a guy who I'm a big fan of Josh Sweat, but you're going to have to pick your poison. And if it's not Josh Sweat, you could make an argument that both of them had their disappearing moments at the end of the season, but who didn't? But I do think and the other thing is he as stout at the against the run as you'd like, but like I could make some play for Jared Verse from FSU if you want to beef up the edges a little bit, because one's going to go out the door next year, because you can't bring both of them back. So the Eagles, I think, in their mentality, have to choose one. And if it's Hassan, then potentially it might not be Sweat.
And one more thing about that is, you're looking at, okay, if this team was in a full rebuild mode, maybe you go with a Josh Sweat over a Hassan Reddick. If you are in a win now mentality, which this team is, Hassan Reddick is a no-brainer. He is the more elite talent, and he needs to be a Philadelphia Eagle until he's done playing.
Yeah, and what makes you not think that if they say, hey, we're going to keep Reddick, give him the extension, and we're going to move on from Sweat, whether that's trade or whatever it may be, what is it that you say, okay, they signed Van Ginkel and they have Nolan Smith and they draft another guy to give those three guys to get the production of what Sweat, and have guys who are be able to rotate and be able to keep a guy like Reddick fresher, not have to have him play as many snaps, and be able to do a type of rotation, because there are a ton of rotating pass rushers on the market. Older veterans.
There's a ton. I mean, there's Clowney still is out there.
Yeah, and listen, I'm more comfortable in letting a guy like Josh Sweat go and being able to get his production in terms of a couple of guys than getting rid of an elite pass rusher and hopefully able to get the production.
Right.
I mean, he addresses tackles with quickness.
Yeah.
With his nuanced game. So I think it's hard to. I mean, I think the first thing when Hassan was signed, the first person to greet him in the locker room was Jalen Hurts. He said, "Now I don't have to worry about you coming around the edge."
Yeah. And I'm really not looking to have him be against us in any way. I mean, I don't need him to have the mentality of destroying us because he's not on the team. He's still an elite player. Let's not.
No,
imagine he ends up in
Dallas
or with the 49ers.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you need to keep elite talent who are
and
giving
you can't replace his output right now.
No. So,
I've the fan bases have been a little bit. I think there's a good faction who love what Hassan brings, and the other one like, oh, he's getting close to 30. He wants too much. I'm like, bro, he's been underpaid. He's underpaid for his production.
His whole career, by the way.
It just is what it is. I mean, you can't look at his numbers and be like, he's washed. I mean, he's double-digit sacks in 4 consecutive years. Like, that's rare breed.
Yeah.
Listen, he's pass rushers, and you look at some of these pass rushers, like you mentioned, they're up there in age. They're in their 30s, and yet they're still producing. And again, if you're able to
2-year deal, I'm cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you're able to get other guys to be able to help rotate him out and not have him play as much, because he played a lot of snaps. Him and Sweat both played, I think, way too many snaps because they were rotated a little bit more in 2022 than they were in 23. So you kind of saw him more down, especially towards the end.
29's old.
Yeah, I guess it is.
29 is old.
He's a miracle that he can still walk on a football field, right?
29 is not old.
He's got a whole second life.
29 is not old. I'm telling you.
People need to stop with the whole, because Bradbury 29, all that. Oh, he fell off a cliff and everything like that. 2 totally different type of players.
It's not like a Cinderella pumpkin situation.
I'm telling you, that's why people see James Bradbury, the contract that he got, and the way he played last year, and they're going to say, Hassan Reddick is 29 years old. He's going to want a big deal. What say that he doesn't do that? It's just, I'm telling you, that's what they do.
Bradbury and I'm telling you, the way that we were playing Bradbury and some, I would never have him manned up against JSN with no safety over top. He's not.
That's not what he does.
I have a scouting report that the Eagles wrote up of Bradbury, and it says that he can't handle twitchy guys. The way that we were deploying him, and then we had him in the slot. We had Bradbury in the slot last year, which was he had to be there because we had injuries.
And Howie did mention that about how the positions they put players in because they weren't, which.
I just my thing with Bradbury, as much as I just think I would trust him with Fangio to do the right thing versus what we had him doing last year.
I just think the scheme was so scattered with Sean Desai that there was no way that the team could be successful.
But there was a lot of movement, even the amount of players that we had at slot.
Yeah.
It was like chairs, the injuries at safety. It was a mess back there.
Yeah, Goodrich, Ricks,
and I'm saying, if you're thinking, you're stinking. And those players were out there thinking. No reaction
because they had no idea what the scheme was and what they were supposed to do on a week-to-week, series-to-series, play-to-play basis.
Yeah. When a touchdown happens and you see the players immediately look for blame, like, were you supposed to?
Meanwhile, was the blame Desai? Was it what's the guy's name? Patrick? What's his name? I don't even want to think about him. Bearded dude. What's his
Patricia?
name?
Matt
Patricia. Patrick. Yeah. That's where your blame started. They did not know what they were doing.
I just said we have Fangio, so it's McDonald's versus McDowell's.
They've got the golden arcs. Deal. We've got the golden. They've got the golden arches. We've got the golden arcs.
See, Chip knows.
Aha!
Yeah.
Aha!
Chip knows. Well, at least we have the guy that we're not out here trying to get a disciple of. We have the dude who we originally wanted. He's been in this. He knows what we have in place. I don't think he'll have Hassan Reddick dropping in coverage and Josh Sweat dropping in coverage. So I feel a little bit more positive about the experience with Fangio.
I mean, it can't be worse.
No, it can't be.
It can't be worse, Johnny. I know you look for sometimes just to be pessimistic. It truly cannot be worse.
No, it can't be. That was pretty bad. I think Fangio will be able to put
a cohesive program together.
Let me ask you guys a quick question. Are Are you guys opposed to getting a cornerback early?
No.
No.
I'm
I do forget
opposed to
about McKenzie.
starting early.
Isaiah is still in the house. People forget about that.
That's Johnny's dude.
Listen, I would definitely look at a corner because I feel, especially in the first 3 rounds, you can get a player that is at a high caliber. And I think that they've, for too many seasons, have just neglected that. And, I understand they have some guys with, Ringo and Ricks, and I get that, but you can't just keep hoping undrafted guys become something. It doesn't always happen. And I feel like if there's a guy that either falls or somebody in, say, the second round that you didn't think was going to be there, you have to jump on it.
Mitchell from Toledo, man.
Yeah.
I had a good talk with him. Told me he models his game after Darius Slay. He put in work. I was like, all right, let me see him versus these other wideouts in the SEC at the Senior Bowl on an island, and he did his thing. He made himself a lot of money,
Which is great.
There's a number of guys that I like. Max Melton.
Yeah. He
and
had
Rakestraw from Mizzou. There's some guys that the Eagles they're going to be able to get a young guy that is going to have a high ceiling. And I think they need to address these positions, whether it's linebacker, whether it's safety. And listen, for everyone that's complaining about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and why would you want to draft him because he's basically the same size as Nakobe Dean and you can't have 2 small inside linebackers.
Nakobe Dean ain't been on the field.
Listen, you tell that to the Baltimore Ravens who have Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen last year. Both of them weren't big guys. They both were about 230, around 6 foot. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but you look at San Francisco 49ers. I know Fred Warner, 6'3", 230. Dre Greenlaw and Al Shahir played for them, played a lot of snaps, and they both are 228 and about 6 foot, little over 6 foot.
What about Edrin Cooper? You guys in on that? A little better at coverage?
What?
Edrin Cooper?
Cooper I like. I like Cooper too. I like him a lot.
Second round.
Yeah,
I'm wondering. I mean, we do have 2 picks in the second round. I think they could use one of those to move up. To be honest,
to me, I don't know what Nakobe Dean is.
Nobody does.
Injured. To me, it screams. I'm
not waiting. I'm not waiting either.
We can't. And that's what I was saying before. We cannot continue to wait for. We can wait for guys to develop. We can't wait for guys to find the field.
I mean, I'm all about competition and bring. If we have Dean here, I'm bringing in more competition just because that's the way it works.
I like Peyton Wilson.
Yeah, he was down to Senior Bowl as well. Cedric Gray from North Carolina. He had a good Senior Bowl, but I think overall, I mean, I'm looking for guys that can cover too, man. If you're gonna get the hybrids of the world, if you like the Jeremy Chins or the Duggars, I mean, I like that whole hybrid stuff. So it could be interesting.
So, Gayle, I got to ask you before we wrap this up, and I've been asking everybody that we've talked to in the last couple of weeks, especially with the draft coming up, knowing you're a draft guy, knowing you're a college football guy, knowing the path that the Philadelphia Eagles fan base goes with when it comes to players. We can obviously see that the fan base loves to lock on to one guy, and it's a failure if we don't get that guy. So it was Mariota a couple of years ago. It was every year, pick a guy, right?
Ricky
Micah Parsons was the guy.
Go that far?
What's that?
Said Ricky Williams. You trying to go that far?
Yeah. So we latch onto a guy, and if we don't get that guy, it's a failure. Is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. that guy this year?
I don't think it's a failure.
No. I'm not saying you. I'm saying the fan base.
I mean, I don't think it's a failure if we do not get him. I think it's a great story for the fan base to rejuvenate our nostalgic love for Trotter. Who better to get than I know he played locally. So I mean, but I do think it's a great story. But I think there's other needs.
I agree.
And I'm not saying I would hate the pick. But if I'm bringing in guys, I need.
In a couple of years, there is another Trotter coming who's bigger. Just saying,
Johnny.
I'm just, I mean, I get it's a great story. It's
right.
a great story. and I want to like let the feel good stuff go and just be real with it. I'm not. I would love to root the story on. It's just a matter of I could go other places.
And I think we all could. I was just, I've been asking that question just because I know how this fan base is. I know how my heartstrings pull sometimes, and that's kind of.
Nakobe Dean was that guy. A lot of people love Nakobe Dean.
I think that they were happy that he fell where he fell, but I don't think it was that level for us, where that one guy,
I'm trying to think who was that one guy that
Justin Jefferson was that one guy.
Yeah.
Here we go. He starts bringing up the memories here.
I'm only saying the one name, sir.
It's
now
funny.
Listen, there's been times 2010, Earl Thomas, we got Brandon Graham. Yeah, it took a couple of years, but
hey, if you think about it, Brandon Graham has had a longer career. The last big play Earl Thomas had was when he had a situation with his brother.
Yeah, I was going to say the last thing I think of Earl Thomas is him and his brother.
A double dragon situation. I think. I
thought we were leaving all that in the green room with the pudding pops.
Oh God!
No, but I think. Brandon Graham came up with the biggest play in Eagles history.
Let me ask you this before we sign off. Last question. BG 15th year. Yes or no?
Oh yeah, I heard it's already done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't let that not happen.
Boom. Done.
That's what I heard. I heard it's locked in already.
All right. Well, I'll take your word for it.
You can sleep on that one.
He said take it to the bank.
Take it to the bank. All right. So, Gayle, thanks again for joining us. Absolutely appreciate it. We will definitely get you on again. We get into the off season. I have a couple things I'm working on that I want to get you on. Some fun little shows
I got you.
Related to the Eagles. And Chip, as always, you always join me with your fun spring training. The Phillies. I see you're rocking your Phils.
Well, I was at a PIAA baseball meeting tonight, so I was all baseball mode when I had to switch gears. Can I tell you that I already have almost 40 PIAA games on my books?
40.
Like I am working every single day once baseball. My first game is March 18th.
Can you send me your schedule? I'd like to come and yell at you one of these games.
Absolutely.
That'd be fun. That'd be a fun outing.
And I'm gonna do? I'm gonna send you one of my 7th grade baseball games that I'm doing, so you can literally be the only person yelling.
Listen, I used to coach 7th graders, so
did I.
There's yelling.
Can I tell you one of the other things exciting is one of the games I get to do is for my students. So I'm literally gonna teach all day, put on the ump gear, and walk outside of my school. And I already told kids which ones I'm ejecting.
Are you an animated ump?
Yes.
With the
Yep. Sure am. My strike 3 call, I do a little and then I start the lawnmower.
Oh my God.
Only if they're looking.
But with that, again, thanks for Gayle for joining us. As always, thanks to everyone for commenting, subscribe. But next week we're going to have Devin Jackson on, talk a little bit about the combine, what he saw, who he likes, get his insight. He's very good in terms of the draft, so want to get his insight on that. So that's going to be a fun episode next week. So just make sure you tune in to that.
I will.
But with that, as always, we always love to end it with 2 happy words. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.